Hey guys, Cameron here with Emerson Property Management. Every week I bring you tools, tactics, strategies, great mustache, lessons I've learned, things that help me build up a sizable rental portfolio in about 2 years and now manage that portfolio. Today, guys, I want to talk through the scary thing of maintenance emergencies. So if you guys have one or two properties, I can tell you that you're probably going to have one, maybe two maintenance emergencies every 12 to 18 months. You're not going to really have that many come up. And I think that some property managers do a very, very poor job, and probably intentionally, of, oh, what happens when the toilet clogs at 2 a.m.? Who are they going to call? I can tell you that we manage 80 units. I probably have a true emergency once every 2 months, maybe once a month, not quite that frequently. It's closer to, the 2 month mark, maybe 6 weeks. So between a month and 2 months, that we get a true maintenance emergency, and we have 80 units. So if you have two or three, unless you do a very, very crappy job at turning the property and do shit work and don't hire people and do everything yourself, you really shouldn't have that many true maintenance emergencies. Now, Cameron, what is a maintenance emergency? I hear this from property managers, and I think that's it, guys. Like, why does a property manager exist? If you're a small owner, the first thing you probably think of is, well, I don't understand the property code. I want to make sure the property is taken care of. I don't want to have to communicate with the tenants. I don't want to have to dispatch somebody to repair. They have the contacts to handle that stuff. And that's all valid. But I think something that scares people the most is, what happens when a pipe bursts? What happens when a hot water tank blows? What happens when the sewage backs up? How quickly are they going to respond? When are they going to get there? And again, I can tell you that, excuse me, guys. I can tell you that over my almost 10-year career in property management, some official and some unofficial, that stuff happens very rarely. You have an old home with an old sewer system, the cast iron pipe, God knows what. Yeah, you're going to end up replacing it. But once it's replaced with new Schedule 40 pipe, you're done. You're done for damn near, 30, 40, 50 years. You're not going to have to mess with it as long as you don't do something crazy or a tree grows into this or whatever. So the point of me saying this and the point of me having this video is to just put into perspective and let you guys really understand, if you have a couple properties, and most folks, it's like 70 or 80% of landowners or of landlords have just one property. So most of you listening have just one. If you have more than that, great, but very rarely do you get people with more than 5 or 10. You're not going to have that many emergencies. Take care of the property. You don't need at 1 or 2, unless you really don't want to mess with it and you hire a property manager, you don't need to go out and get your own emergency line. Have a handyman, pay them, hey, would you be on call for $50, $100 a month? If I have a couple properties, they'll do that, and it will save you a bunch of time and money, or a bunch of time and anxiety at least. Or you hire a property manager that handles all that stuff for you. Those are kind of the two sides. But I hope the first piece of this is I want you to be fully aware that this isn't, for most people, it's not, the emergency maintenance thing isn't something that comes up a lot. It's not like, processing payments and collecting rent that comes up every single month. You should not be having emergency calls every month, 2 months on one property. That something is very, very wrong. You need to fire your handyman or contractor. So that's kind of piece one of this. Don't get too intimidated by maintenance emergencies. If you have a couple properties, it's not that big of a deal. But the second thing is, what does constitute a maintenance emergency? So let's say you're your own landlord, you're your own property manager, you handle communicating with the tenants. What do you tell them is a maintenance emergency? Do you tell them, hey, when the AC goes out, that's an emergency? Hey, if you bust a hole in the drywall, I need to know about that immediately. That's an emergency. If the sink stops up, that's an emergency. How are you determining what is an emergency, and are you letting your tenants know what an emergency is? Maybe everybody has a different deem of emergency, but I can tell you there's only a very few things that I and we at Emerson deem to be an emergency. Water. If there is a leak, I want to know about it yesterday. I want to know about it immediately. Is it leaking from the sink? Is it leaking from the ceiling? Is it a roof leak? I want to know what's going on, because water left unattended is very damaging, and water can travel. I've seen it travel across joists 20, 30 feet. It can be very detrimental, rot out subfloor, all sorts of horror stories. So I want to know about water leaks immediately. I don't care if it's under a trap, a drip pan in an attic starts leaking. I want to know about that. A water tank starts dripping on the T&P valve, something like that. I want to know about all that. Any water leaks, I want to know about immediately. That's one thing that I would constitute as an emergency. Now, Cameron, well, if the trap starts leaking underneath there, is that emergency? Underneath the sink leak? No, have them put a bucket under there and submit a request, and then get over there before the bucket fills up, right? I mean, let's be practical here. If the outside hose bib is leaking, I don't need to run over there at 2 a.m. and they notice at 2 a.m. I don't need to know about that. But substantial leaks or leaks in the ceiling on inside that you can't kind of control with just a bucket or something small, need to know about those immediately. The second thing is in the extreme temperatures. So if it's 100 degrees and the AC goes out, that is an emergency for us. It is an emergency. Per the property code, there are some different guidelines around that, but for us, that's an emergency. We want to get people taken care of ASAP. Obviously Houston, it's hotter than hell between May and September. So that kind of creates a lot of busy work between there. But in the winter, we want to make sure people have heat as well. So if it gets cold, it's below 50, 60 degrees, we want that's also an emergency if the heat goes out. So AC goes out when it's really hot, above 90, 100 degrees. And then when the temperature falls below 50, 60 degrees and the heat goes out, those are emergencies to us. If the heat goes out, the AC, when it's really hot and humid and the AC goes out, it can start, you can start getting moisture build up all throughout the home. So you want to get in there from a home perspective as well, from a landlord perspective, not just, the tenants are hot, it's no big deal. That's a whole safety issue that you have to take care of. But also you don't want moisture and stuff building up inside the home when, in Houston, it's 80% humidity throughout the summer. That can create bad things. Mold is one that comes to mind. And then obviously if the temperature drops below 50, 60 degrees and at night it goes down, and I'm talking inside the home, it starts dropping, you can have some real issues with plumbing. We had the freeze here in Houston a while ago. So if it starts getting below that 50, 60 degree mark, you gotta, inside the home, it can create some issues for you. And obviously outside it'd be 20, 30, 40 degrees. So extreme temperatures with AC or heat, that's one. Water is another. Fire is something I want to know about, but there's not much I can really do about it. So, if we get an emergency call that says the house is on fire, do not call me, call 911. That is something that we tell everybody. Do call 911 immediately. If there's an electrical issue, we tell people to shut stuff off, right? Shut everything off at the breaker. They don't need to be doing electrical work, but there's not much I can do from that. We got to get an electrician out there. There's not much, unless you're a licensed electrician, you're a landlord, there's not really much you can do from, an emergency perspective there. Shut off the breaker. Stop, shut that off, wait, get a hold of a licensed electrician, let them work with it. So to summarize all that, water and extreme temperatures for your air conditioning or heat. You don't want to let people, be out in the cold or out in the heat for too long. Really, it'd be ideal you don't want to let them go a day, but in all reality, sometimes that happens a couple days. The only other thing I'll say is hot water is a big thing too. So if the power goes out and you have an electric hot water tank, bye-bye hot water. If the power goes out and you have a gas hot water tank, you're good. We had the Houston freeze down here. Obviously, people lost power for God knows how long. And thankfully, a lot of people here have gas. So you were still able to cook on your stove. You still had hot water. But that's something else that comes up a lot is the hot water. I hope that was helpful. Don't get so concerned about maintenance. Don't get, not maintenance, but maintenance emergencies. That's always a big scary thing. It's like attorneys like, oh no, if you don't have an LLC and have this and this wrapped and this series of this and file in this county or this state, you're going to be sued and lose all your money. It's like, Obviously they're going to tell you about the person who lost hundreds of millions or millions of dollars or whatever and now destitute. But in all reality, if you have a couple properties, odds you having a maintenance call, a maintenance emergency that you have to take at 2 a.m. are pretty slim. I don't know if you guys can hear it. The pups obviously thinking this video is going a little too long. But that's one. Don't be too concerned. And then the few things that constitute emergency, deem what they are for you in your area, and then talk to that about your tenant. You can put together a very simple page that say, this is what constitutes an emergency. If you're going to call me after 6 or before, between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. or whatever your emergency hours are, leaks, AC's out when it's above 80, 90 degrees, heat's out when it's below 50 degrees. Come up with those things. Make sure you're kind of following the property code as well. You can reference that, just Google that and you can find it. And as long as you're doing that, you're going to be in good shape. You might have one call all year. You might not have anything. And then again, if you're having consistent calls with 4, 5, even 10 units, if you're getting a maintenance emergency call once a month, something is very wrong. You need to fire contractors. Something is not going right because you should not be having that. Things should work. That's why you pay your contractor to do that, to fix stuff. So I hope that was helpful. If it was, let me know. If it wasn't, let me know. And I'll see you all next week.